There is a moment almost every man experiences but rarely understands, the moment when attention turns into distance. One day the energy feels warm, effortless, alive. Conversations flow. Eye contact lingers. There is a subtle tension in the air that feels promising, almost electric, and then something shifts. Replies slow down. The tone changes. The space between messages grows wider, colder, no explanation, no conflict, just a quiet withdrawal that leaves you standing alone with questions you never expected to ask. Most men think this moment is about losing her, but it's not. It's about losing emotional balance, because the instant she pulls away, something deeper gets triggered inside you. A reflex that whispers, you must act now, fix it now, prove something now, and that's where the dynamic begins to change, not when she ignores you, but when you abandon your center trying to bring her back. Here's the truth few people talk about. Silence has power only when you react to it emotionally. When she ignores you, the mind starts creating stories. Maybe she lost interest, maybe someone else appeared, maybe you weren't enough. And without realizing it, you begin to chase answers that were never clearly asked for. You send longer texts, you explain your intentions, you try to recreate the warmth that existed before, and with every extra effort, the emotional weight shifts. Not because caring is wrong, but because urgency changes perception. Attraction doesn't disappear because you showed interest. It fades when your emotional state starts depending on her reactions. That's the subtle line most men never notice. The moment your energy says, I need you to respond so I can feel steady, the dynamic quietly tilts out of balance. When a woman ignores you, it rarely means she wants conflict. Often it's a moment of emotional testing, conscious or unconscious. She steps back and observes whether you remain grounded or whether you rush forward trying to restore certainty. And certainty, while comforting, can slowly remove the mystery that attraction feeds on. Think about the beginning, the phase where tension felt effortless. You weren't measuring every reply. You weren't calculating every silence. You were simply present, connected to your own rhythm. That presence is what created intrigue. But when distance appears, many men forget that rhythm and begin performing instead of being. Here's something important to understand. Ignoring behavior is not always a strategy. Sometimes it's confusion, sometimes emotional overwhelm, sometimes curiosity about how you respond under pressure. But your reaction determines whether the connection tightens or quietly dissolves. Because emotional strength is not about forcing closeness, it's about remaining centered when closeness fluctuates. So what happens when you react impulsively? You send multiple messages trying to re-spark the energy. You ask if something is wrong. You try to pull clarity from silence. And without intending to, you signal that her absence has more control over your mood than your own life does. That is the moment attraction begins to feel heavy instead of natural. Now imagine a different response. She pulls away, and instead of chasing the silence, you return to yourself, not as punishment, not as a game, but as a quiet reminder that your emotional stability does not depend on someone else's timing. You continue living, you continue progressing, your energy stays calm, unhurried, unshaken. And something subtle shifts, because when reaction disappears, expectation breaks. She may have expected urgency, she may have expected emotional pressure, but instead she encounters presence. And presence feels powerful. Let's talk about ego for a moment. Not arrogance, not pride, but emotional positioning. When someone believes they completely control the rhythm of your attention. Predictability enters the connection, and predictability over time reduces tension. But when you remain balanced, when you don't rush to fill every gap, the dynamic becomes alive again. It's not dramatic, just uncertain enough to feel interesting. Breaking someone's ego is not about dominance. It's about dissolving the illusion that your world revolves around their behavior. And the way you do that is not through coldness, but through self-containment. You stop narrating your worth through her replies. You stop interpreting silence as rejection. You allow space to exist without turning it into anxiety. Many men believe strength means ignoring back, but emotional coldness rarely creates attraction. What creates attraction is grounded warmth, the ability to care without losing composure, because composure communicates depth, and depth invites curiosity. Imagine she disappears for a few days. Your instinct wants to reach out, to check, to reconnect, but instead you slow down, you observe your emotions without acting on every impulse. You remind yourself that attention given freely is meaningful, but attention given out of fear feels heavy. And when she eventually returns, because often she does, your energy remains calm. You respond without resentment, without overexcitement, just balanced presence. That balance quietly shifts the emotional scale. There is something deeply attractive about a person whose mood does not swing with every notification. It signals inner stability, and stability feels safe yet slightly mysterious. because she realizes your world continues with or without constant validation. Here's another layer most people overlook. When she ignores you, she is also feeling the absence of your energy. And absence, when handled with dignity, creates reflection. She begins to wonder what you're doing, where your attention has gone, whether she misjudged how easily you could be pulled back. And that curiosity is far more powerful than any explanation you could send. You don't need louder words, you need quieter confidence, the kind that moves slowly, the kind that doesn't beg to be understood, the kind that lets actions speak through calm consistency. Because the real transformation doesn't happen in her mind first, it happens inside yours. You shift from chasing reaction to embodying presence, from seeking reassurance to offering grounded energy, from fearing silence to using it as space to reconnect with yourself. And when that shift happens, something almost magnetic begins to grow, not because you changed her, but because you stopped losing yourself in the process. Most people think attraction is built through constant effort, more messages, more explanations, more emotional intensity. But attraction is rarely about how much you give. It is about how you hold your energy when things become uncertain, because uncertainty reveals character faster than comfort ever could. When she ignores you, your mind searches for control. You want to fix the moment, define the situation, bring everything back to the way it felt before, but emotional maturity understands something different. Not every silence needs to be solved. Some silences exist to reveal who you are when you are no longer being mirrored by someone else's attention. This is the point where many men start negotiating with their own self-respect. They lower their pace, they become overly available, they try to prove that they are understanding, patient, endlessly present. And ironically, the more they try to show emotional value, the more the dynamic loses tension, because attraction grows in emotional space, not emotional pressure. Imagine a candle flame. If you cup your hands too tightly around it, trying to protect it, you suffocate the oxygen that keeps it alive. Connection works the same way. When she steps back and you rush forward with intensity, the emotional air disappears. But when you allow space, the flame has room to breathe again. There's something powerful about restraint, not silence filled with resentment, but silence filled with awareness. You observe your urge to reach out. You feel the instinct to send another message. Instead of acting immediately, you sit with that impulse. You learn that emotional control is not suppression. It's short because the man who reacts instantly teaches others how to control him. But the man who responds with intention teaches others how to respect him. Respect doesn't come from being distant. It comes from emotional steadiness, from showing that your internal world has structure, rhythm, depth. And when she senses that your life continues moving forward, that your mood does not collapse under her silence, a quiet shift begins to form. Not loud, not dramatic, just subtle curiosity. She starts to notice the absence of urgency, the absence of emotional chasing, and that absence challenges expectations, because many people are used to attention arriving instantly, predictably, endlessly. But when attention becomes intentional instead of automatic, its value changes. Here is something important to understand. You are not trying to win against her ego. You are dissolving the dynamic that made ego necessary in the first place. When someone feels they have full emotional control over you, their investment decreases. Not consciously, but emotionally. So when you stop reacting to every shift, you reintroduce emotional balance. You stop being predictable, and unpredictability, when rooted in calmness, creates intrigue. Think about how energy feels when someone is centered, their presence is calm, their voice doesn't rush, their attention feels chosen, not desperate. That energy cannot be ignored for long because it carries weight without demanding it. Now let's talk about what happens internally when she goes quiet. At first, your mind tries to fill the gaps with assumptions. Maybe she's losing interest, maybe she found someone else, maybe you weren't enough. And those thoughts create emotional urgency. But assumptions are stories, not facts. And reacting to stories weakens your position inside the connection. Instead, you return to reality. Right now, there is simply space, nothing more, nothing less. When you stop labeling silence as rejection, your emotional posture changes, your messages become lighter, your presence becomes grounded again, and grounded energy feels safe yet intriguing because it doesn't beg for validation. Here's something deeper most people overlook. Sometimes ignoring behavior is not about you at all. It may be her own emotional fluctuation, her own need for distance, her own internal questions. But when you take silence personally, you create tension that never needed to exist. Tension built on insecurity pushes connection further away. So instead of reacting outwardly, you move inward. You reconnect with the parts of your life that existed before her attention. Your goals, your routines, your growth, not as a distraction, but as a reminder that your identity is larger than one person's response pattern. Because there is something undeniably attractive about someone who continues evolving even when emotional certainty disappears, because growth communicates abundance. And abundance shifts the emotional dynamic. She begins to feel that your attention is valuable, not guaranteed. That realization alone can soften ego more than confrontation ever could. Now imagine she finally reaches out again, a simple message, a casual tone as if nothing changed. This is where many men make another mistake. They either respond with hidden resentment or overwhelming excitement. Both reactions reveal emotional imbalance. Instead, you respond with calm warmth, balanced energy, no drama, no need to revisit silence unless she chooses to. Because emotional maturity does not punish distance, it simply refuses to lose itself within it. You see, attraction is rarely about grand gestures. It is about emotional rhythm, the ability to stay grounded when the pace changes, to remain centered when attention fluctuates, to hold presence without trying to control outcomes. And when she feels that rhythm inside you, something begins to shift again, not because you demanded respect, but because you embodied it. Here's a truth many people avoid. Confidence is not the absence of doubt, it is the ability to move forward even when doubt exists. So when she ignores you and you continue living fully, you send a silent message. I value connection, but I value myself more. And that message resonates deeper than any explanation. Over time, she starts noticing details she didn't before. Your consistency, your calm reactions, your ability to stay emotionally composed, and ego, the illusion of control, begins to lose its grip because she realizes your attention is not something she can summon through silence. It is something she must meet with presence. That realization does not create distance. It creates balance. And balance is where attraction feels alive again. But remember, this is not about pretending you don't care. It is about caring without losing structure, caring without chasing. Caring while staying connected to your own emotional center, because the strongest energy in any connection is not force, it is quiet certainty. And quiet certainty grows every time you choose patience over reaction, presence over pressure, depth over urgency. There's a moment after the silence settles when the emotional noise begins to fade. At first, the mind wants answers, but as you stop chasing those answers, something unexpected happens. You start hearing yourself again, your own rhythm, your own priorities, your own emotional ground, and that shift is subtle but powerful. Because the more centered you become, the less her silence feels like a threat and the more it feels like space. Most people misunderstand attraction. They believe it grows when you prove your value repeatedly. But real attraction often grows when your presence feels composed, intentional, slightly unpredictable, not confusing, not distant, just self-contained. When she ignores you, she may expect a certain script. Maybe she's used to men sending follow-ups, used to emotional urgency, used to attention arriving before she even asks for it. And when that pattern doesn't happen with you, curiosity quietly takes its place because you didn't react the way she anticipated. Curiosity is powerful. It turns absence into intrigue. It transforms silence into reflection, and reflection slowly softens ego, not through pressure, but through realization. She begins to feel your emotional independence, not as rejection, but as strength. Here's something most people overlook. Your energy teaches others how to treat you. If your presence becomes frantic the moment attention disappears, the dynamic shifts toward imbalance. But when your energy remains calm, grounded, almost effortless, it communicates that your emotional world has depth beyond the moment, and depth is magnetic. You don't need to show strength through loud actions. Sometimes strength is simply continuing forward, going to the gym, working on your craft, laughing with friends, posting moments of growth without hidden messages, because when she sees you living fully without emotional drama, the image she holds of you begins to evolve, not through words, through contrast. Contrast changes perception. The difference between someone who waits anxiously and someone who moves with quiet certainty is felt immediately. And when she senses that difference, something inside her recalibrates. She begins to wonder where your attention has shifted, whether you've changed, whether she underestimated how centered you truly are. This is not manipulation, it is alignment. You are aligning your actions with self-respect rather than fear. And self-respect creates emotional gravity. People naturally lean toward what feels grounded. Let's talk about emotional presence. Presence is not constant messaging. It is the feeling that when you are there, you are fully there. And when you step away, it is not dramatic, it is natural. So when she ignores you, you allow your presence to breathe. You don't rush to reclaim space. You don't force conversations to continue. You simply let the rhythm reset, and something unexpected begins to happen. She starts remembering the version of you that felt calm-centered, slightly mysterious, the version of you that didn't chase validation. That memory creates tension. Because people are drawn to emotional stability the way they are drawn to quiet confidence in a crowded room. Sometimes she may test the waters again, a casual message, a light joke. A small attempt to reconnect. Your response here matters more than you realize. You don't rush. You don't overcompensate. You reply with warmth, but without surrendering your emotional pace. Because attraction grows when energy feels balanced. Not overwhelming, not distant. Balanced. Many men believe they need to reclaim dominance in this moment. But dominance is not what restores attraction. Composure does. The ability to stay emotionally steady even when the connection fluctuates. There is something deeply intriguing about a man who doesn't react from fear, a man who listens more than he explains, who allows conversations to flow naturally instead of forcing them forward. That energy feels rare, and rarity increases perceived value. Let's go deeper. When she ignores you, it can awaken old patterns inside you. The need to be chosen, the fear of being replaced, the desire to prove your worth. But those patterns are not the truth of the present moment. They are echoes. And when you become aware of them, you stop letting them control your behavior. Instead, you choose calm action. You choose patience. You choose growth, because the real power isn't in breaking her ego. It's in breaking the cycle that made you feel powerless. And when you break that cycle, she feels the difference. Your voice sounds steadier. Your responses feel lighter. Your presence becomes less predictable and more intentional. Intentional energy carries weight. It shows that you are not reacting automatically, but choosing consciously. And that choice introduces a new dynamic, one built on mutual curiosity rather than emotional dependency. Over time, she may begin to invest more again, not because you chased her, but because she sensed that your attention is no longer guaranteed. An attention that feels earned carries emotional significance. You see, people don't value what they can control completely. They value what feels alive, dynamic, evolving. And when you step into emotional balance, you become that dynamic presence again. There will be moments when you feel tempted to return to old habits, to send long messages, to explain everything you felt during the silence. But restraint here protects the connection. Not cold restraint, but grounded restraint. You allow conversations to rebuild naturally without turning the past into pressure, because the goal is not to make her feel small. The goal is to create a space where attraction feels equal again, where both energies move toward each other instead of one constantly reaching. And as that balance returns, you notice something subtle. Her tone softens, her attention lingers longer, her curiosity grows deeper, not because you forced it, but because you stopped interrupting the natural flow of emotional tension. This is the quiet art of presence, the ability to remain warm without being consumed, to remain interested without losing independence, to remain grounded even when connection feels uncertain. And that art transforms the entire dynamic. There comes a point when you stop watching your phone and start watching yourself. The shift is quiet. You notice that your breathing feels steadier. Your thoughts stop racing toward conclusions. Your energy stops reaching outward and begins settling inward. And in that moment, something changes that has nothing to do with her and everything to do with you. Because the real transformation was never about making someone chase you. It was about becoming someone who does not abandon himself when attention fades. That's the difference between emotional performance and emotional presence. Performance tries to create reactions. Presence creates impact without forcing anything. If she ignored you and you learned to remain grounded, you didn't lose power, you found it, you realized that attraction isn't built through constant reassurance. It's built through emotional stability, the ability to stay calm when the rhythm changes, the ability to let moments breathe instead of rushing to control them. And when she begins to notice this new energy in you, something subtle happens. Her guard softens, not because you tried to break it, but because she senses you are no longer reacting from fear. Fear creates pressure, calm creates curiosity. Maybe she reaches out more often now. Maybe her tone feels warmer. Maybe she begins asking questions she never asked before. And the old version of you might have rushed to hold on to that change, afraid it could disappear again. But now you understand something deeper. You don't need to hold on to energy. You simply meet it as it arrives, because connection feels strongest when it flows freely, not when it's forced to stay. This is where emotional maturity reveals itself. You stop trying to win arguments that never happened. You stop replaying silence as rejection. You stop measuring your value through someone else's timing. Instead, you become present, fully there when she speaks, fully grounded when she steps back. And that consistency becomes magnetic. You see, ego doesn't collapse because someone fought against it. Ego softens when it meets calm confidence, when it realizes it cannot shake you through distance, when it sees that your world continues expanding regardless of emotional fluctuations. And that realization changes how she feels around you. She no longer feels the need to test your reactions because your reactions have become predictable in the best way. Steady, balanced, secure. There is a quiet elegance in someone who doesn't rush to prove themselves, who allows conversations to unfold naturally, who listens more than they react. That elegance creates emotional safety and emotional intrigue at the same time. And when those two feelings exist together, attraction deepens. Maybe you begin noticing the small things again. The way she mirrors your pace, the way her messages feel more intentional, the way her presence becomes softer, more invested, less guarded, not because you demanded change, but because you changed the emotional atmosphere by becoming centered within yourself. This is the paradox most people miss. The less you chase control, the more balanced the connection becomes. The less you try to force closeness, the more natural closeness feels, and suddenly the silence that once felt heavy becomes just another part of the rhythm, not a threat, not a loss, just space. And space, when handled with emotional intelligence, strengthens connection rather than weakening it, because it allows both people to choose each other freely instead of reacting out of pressure. So if you ever find yourself in that moment again, when attention fades, when replies slow down, when uncertainty appears, remember this version of yourself, the version that didn't panic, the version that didn't chase, the version that stayed calm, grounded, quietly confident, because that energy is not a strategy, it's a mindset. And mindsets shape relationships far more than words ever could. Attraction is not built through intensity alone. It's built through emotional rhythm, through patience, through presence. Through the quiet understanding that connection grows strongest when both people feel free, not controlled. And when you embody that understanding, you don't need to break anyone's ego. You simply outgrow the dynamic that made ego necessary. Maybe she stays, maybe she doesn't. But what matters is this: you no longer lose yourself in the process. You remain center-curious, open yet deeply grounded. And that is the kind of energy that transforms every connection you step into. As if this perspective spoke to something deeper inside you, stay connected to this space. There's a whole world of emotional intelligence, attraction psychology, and personal growth waiting for those who choose awareness over reaction. Subscribe and continue exploring the power of calm presence. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that strength isn't loud, it's steady. And until the next conversation, stay grounded, stay aware, and remember, the real power isn't in making someone chase you. It's in becoming someone who never has to chase at all.